Let's pivot to the markets now, bring in the head of research at Fundstrat Global Advisors, Tom Lee. Tom, want to talk broadly about markets and other things, but any reaction there to the signing of this trade deal or the potential signing of the USMCA? Is it seen as a positive for markets or no impact?
I think it's marginally a positive because the fact that there's bipartisan support for foreign trade, I think really kind of helps us understand why China-U.S. trade deal ultimately is a positive and the U.S. has a better bargaining position. So I think it's a net positive.
All right, equity markets overall. We saw, we've seen a nice recovery, even at this moment today a little bit, but overall, you've been positive. Do you remain so?
Yeah, I think it's still one of these markets where more investors are, sitting on too much dry powder. And not a lot of people have house money to play with, so I think it's still a market where you're going to see the dips being bought. And then I just think that you still have this big, powerful demographic tailwind taking place. It's a reason the U.S. decoupled this year, but it's also a reason why we're starting to see, I think, next year potentially kind of a reacceleration of growth and upside to S&P earnings.
And that is what? It's related to millennials, I know. You've talked about it in the past, but give us some specifics.
Yeah, what's happening is millennials are really causing a pretty big jump in the 30 to 50-year-old cohort, and that's the most important segment of any country's economy because they're the prime income earners. They're also the ones that consume credit. And for the first time, really in almost 12 years, the number of 30 to 50-year-olds is actually growing again. And if you look at sort of the size of the millennial demographic, that growth is set to take place for almost a decade. So it's a tailwind that we haven't seen in the U.S. economy really since the mid to late 70s.
And Tom, you see this specifically as kind of a U.S. tailwind, right? How come other countries aren't experiencing the same kind of demographic tailwind from millennials? They have millennials all over the world, right?
Yeah, I mean, millennials it refers to people born between 1981 and 2000, but the U.S. actually had a fairly large boom in terms of births around millennials. If you look at Europe, Japan, China, the number of 30 to 50-year-olds is actually contracting. So the tailwind that we're seeing for millennials is largely a U.S. and maybe India-centric story.
Well, I'll give you another boom. That's the baby boom, Tom. I mean, aren't we at a point where a lot of them are retiring and starting to pull down on 401ks, IRAs, and other assets that may be invested in stocks? Is that not a headwind?
Yeah, I mean, they're going to be exiting the workforce and their consumption is going to decline. So that's a bit of a headwind. But you have to consider that there's $100 trillion of U.S. household net worth, of which around $70 trillion is controlled by boomers and silent generation. That's dynastic wealth. I mean, even at a 3% or 5% burn rate, those net assets are actually going to grow. So what I think you have to think about is that $68 trillion is going to be inherited by millennials. I mean, I think it's actually a pretty big tailwind as that money gets passed on to the next generation.